Welcome back to Wrestling Bantz. Today I'm joined by WWE superstar and ECW Heavyweight Champion, Just Incredible. Thank you for coming on and joining me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'll start off. Were you a fan of pro wrestling growing up?
Oh yeah, I was a huge fan. I was big into Hulk Hogan, especially when I was younger. And then as I got a little older, Ric Flair, of course. That's who really made me want to become a pro wrestler, to be honest.
Okay. When did you know you wanted to be a pro wrestler?
I'd probably say 16.
Yeah.
16 years old, I kind of knew, that's what I wanted to do because I wasn't very good at school,
Okay.
and I was like, but I was a good athlete. And I figured, why not? And I just gave it a shot, and I got very lucky, and my career started off,
Were your friends and family supportive of your decision?
Yeah, strangely enough, yes.
Cool.
My parents were very cool. They believed in me, and if they said, if that's something you want to do it.
Good.
I mean, I'm sure like many other parents would have probably wanted me to do something else, but no, they were very supportive, and I was blessed. Yeah.
So where did you train to become a pro wrestler, and who trained you?
I trained at the Hart Brothers Pro Wrestling Camp in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, I went up there in 1992, believe it or not. It's a long time ago, but that's where I trained.
And who trained you there? Who was the trainers?
It was Keith Hart's school, but at the time, Lance Storm was doing most of the training because he had gone through the Hart's camp previously. So even though it was Keith Hart's school, he would only show up once in a while. But Lance did the majority of the training.
What was he like as a trainer?
He was amazing. He was very patient, very good, just very good, and really respected and cared about the business. So like he didn't just half-ass it. I mean, he was really he would dive deep into explanations and making sure you understood what was what and how to do things properly to make sure you didn't hurt yourself or someone else. So yeah, he was very good, very good.
Chris Jericho went through that school as well. Did you ever see him there?
I did see Chris. He wasn't training there. He'd come through the camp. He was there probably a year and a half before me.
Okay.
But I met Chris because he was working. Actually, him and Lance used to work at a bar, bouncing at a nightclub or something in that area. So he would come by once in a while. So I got to meet Chris when I was up there. Yeah.
What about Bret or Owen Hart? Did they ever show up at?
No, they didn't. No, they
What are
didn't.
your memories of them too? I know you got to work with them eventually. But Bret Hart, what was he like?
Bret was cool. He was quiet. I got to work with Owen quite a bit in the ring, and Owen was amazing. Really, really, really great in the ring. Nice person as well. So I loved working with Owen.
Heard he was a bit of a prankster as well, Owen.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any stories about any of his pranks that you remember?
I remember when we used to go to the overseas tours that, we used to get in very late, and, he would literally wake himself up and call everyone's room at like 4 a.m. when we were all exhausted, just trying to catch some sleep. And he would pretend he was room service and wanted to know like what we wanted for breakfast, and he'd put on this, this funny voice and stuff. Brilliant. So yeah, he'd do that to everyone. And then when you said, you would say, I don't want anything, just leave me alone, I'm trying to sleep. He would call back, of course, and just keep going on with the bit. So yeah, he was fun.
That's brilliant. So after you'd done your training, do you remember your first match? Who it was against? And
I do.
Did it go well?
Yeah, it went well. It was in Calgary, actually. At the same place where I trained, and I got to wrestle. My first match was against somebody that went through the camp with me. His name was Bret, and I think he still wrestles in Ontario to this moment. I think he goes by the name of Big Daddy Hammer in Canada, but he didn't quite make it. In wrestling like I did, unfortunately. But he was talented, and we had a pretty good match from what I remember. I'd love to get a tape of that, actually, if it exists.
So in about 1993, you started working for the WWF as an enhancement talent. How did you get that job?
Well, when I moved back to my home state, I live in Connecticut, which is like 2 hours from Manhattan, New York
Yeah.
City. There wasn't a lot of, I didn't, this was pre-internet, I didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of connections.
Mm.
So I was getting frustrated. I didn't really know how to get work in wrestling. So I just went to a live event. WWE was having a live event near my house. And I just got up enough nerve and courage to just go there and, ask around, introduce myself. And, and that was the day that they said, well, we don't need you for tonight, but we're looking for enhancement talent for a new show called Monday Night Raw that we're going to be doing.
Wow.
And that's when Raw first started, and they asked me to come down and work. And that's how I got started, just taking a chance.
You worked with quite a few of the top guys then, like Lex Luger,
Yeah.
Yokozuna,
Yep.
the Steiners, the Head Shrinkers, just to name a few. What were they like to work with? Did they treat you well? Because I know they had a bit of a reputation for being a little rough sometimes with the enhancement talent.
Yeah, they were okay. I mean, I never had a problem with anybody. They were always very professional, and took care of me. So yeah, I think they were, usually guys that weren't very good in the ring. They'd probably rough them up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I always just, I just tried to do the best for them, making them look good. So as long as they looked good, I was okay.
Wow. How long did you do that for?
Probably 2 years, close to 2 years.
And then is that when you got signed officially by the WWF?
Correct. Yeah, I was just, I'd gotten to know Vince a little bit, Vince McMahon, and started to, just be friends with people. When you're around a lot, you meet people and you talk with people, and they were very high on my work. I was a young man, and they were looking for new talent. So the opportunity came about, and of course I signed. Yeah.
I heard Pat Patterson was a fan of yours.
Yeah.
He
He was great. I mean, he was a true. I mean, he was like such an amazing mind for this business. It's unfortunate that people like that don't exist anymore. Because he really. He was around in the old school days, the late 60s, the early 70s. And, he really had such a wide scope of wrestling, such a knowledge of it, from the territory days to the days of WrestleManias and pay-per-views. So he was very, very, so smart. I mean, you could just pick his brain, and he was just so sharp. And it's unfortunate that, we don't have too many people like that anymore, It really is.
Yeah. So they came up with the character Aldo Montoya.
Yep.
What did you think first of that character? Or were there other characters they pitched to you before that?
The name was always the same. They pitched the name. For some reason they wanted the name Aldo Montoya, which I didn't care. To be honest, I was just happy to be, working for them. To be honest, but at first the first gimmick they offered me was a soccer player, a football player. And I just, I didn't say anything. I'm not going to say it's not good. Right. Yeah. But they decided to change that on their own. But that was the original pitch for me was to be a soccer player, because it was around the time of the World Cup. And they wanted to have a soccer player that was from Portugal. So that was originally the idea, but somehow somebody convinced them not to. But yeah. I think it was the mask thing. They wanted to, because I was enhancement talent, they wanted to put me under a mask.
You had quite a few matches with people like Mick Foley, Bradshaw. Yep. What were they like to work with? Mick Foley?
Mick was great. Mick was great. We talk about it to this day. It was probably, I think it was his first match as Mankind. Working with Aldo. I've had a few of those. It's amazing. If you think about it, I worked CM Punk's first match, Mick Foley's, a lot of other people, Batista's. Yeah, and it's just funny because you don't even think about it until they say it. So Mick, Mick was cool though. I mean, he was a super sweet guy.
What about Bradshaw? What was he like to work with?
He's fine. I always liked working with him. He gets a little bit of a bad rap these days for being a bit of a bully, but I worked with him a ton, and he was always good with me. So I never had much of a problem with anybody. He was cool.
Yeah. You were part of the backstage group known as the Kliq. What was it like? What were they like? Do you have any stories about traveling with them?
Yeah, I mean, I have a ton of stories, but none of them that are, believe it or not, are not that interesting. It was just at the time, I was just, I was a young wrestler, and
Mm,
I was just looking to make friends, and Scott Hall was the one who kind of took me under his wing, and
yeah.
so that's really how that started. It's just at first it was just Scott and I traveling together, and then after a while, Scott's like, "Well, I'm traveling. I want to hook up with Kevin and Sean. You mind going with us?" And then I was like, "Okay." So it just kind of just happened by accident.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah,
like one of
yeah.
those
One of
things.
those
Yeah,
sort of things. Yeah.
yeah.
What was Triple H like?
I was actually there before he was.
Yeah,
So he was fine. He was a different guy then than he is now.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, he's just kind of getting started. So, but he was fine. He was always, one thing I can say about Hunter is he was always professional, and
Hmm.
he always believed in working hard. I mean, nobody works harder than him. Both in the gym, like he took it very seriously. Where like a lot of us guys would go out and have drinks and maybe party a little bit at night. Where he didn't do that. He just went to bed, got his rest, so he could perform the next day, go to the gym, eat properly, and so on. So he took it very seriously.
So in 1997, you left the WWF. Why? What happened?
I wanted to grow. I felt
Yeah,
like I was starting to become. I felt quite good, and they weren't really doing anything with the character or with me, and I just wanted more opportunity. For me, I thought ECW was just. It wasn't my plan. My original plan was to go to WCW,
okay.
but
Why didn't you?
Vince wouldn't let my contract
Okay.
go. Uh,
Ah,
and the only reason he let it go was because I guess Heyman, Paul wanted, the contract to roll over to him. And since Paul and Vince were working together at the time,
yeah.
it just made more sense than me going to the competition.
Hmm. You came in, and it was 97 as Justin. Was it Just Incredible straight away,
Yep,
or
straight up. Yep. My
and
first
you
match. Yeah.
it was against Jerry Lynn?
Yep.
What was Jerry Lynn like to work with, and how did the fans treat you? Because I know they
Um,
can be quite brutal to people who have
yeah.
just come from the
They,
WWF at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. They were fine. I mean, I loved working with Jerry. He was super professional and really, really talented. But the fans, believe it or not, and I was nervous about that too. They weren't a big problem. I don't know why. I thought they would have a field day with me, especially being
Yeah.
Aldo Montoya.
Mm.
But no, they were actually really cool. Like, I guess with the ECW fans, one thing that they always are is as long as you give them good wrestling, they'll be easy on you. You know what I mean? As
Yeah.
long as you're putting in the effort and you give them good stuff, they'll be okay with you. And that's what I did. I guess him and I, because it was his first match as well, if I'm not mistaken, with
Oh, right.
ECW, and
Yeah.
so we both had something to give that day,
Mm.
and I think we both went at it, and to impress both the fans and Paul. And it worked out because we both ended up staying in ECW
Yeah.
for a long time.
You
You
did.
know,
Yeah. What was Paul Heyman like to work with?
he was great. I loved working for Paul. I mean, if I would have never left if ECW hadn't folded and gone under.
Mm.
He was great to work with creatively, and business wise. I mean, I was making more money for ECW than I was for Vince. Believe it or not,
Wow.
yeah, I was making a lot more money, so I was quite happy where I was. It's a shame it didn't last longer. But yeah, ECW was a dream job because you only wrestled 2-3 nights a week, and like I
Hmm.
said, I was making almost double what I made in WWE. So
Wow. You had some great feuds in ECW. One of the most notable ones was with Tommy Dreamer.
yes,
What was Tommy like, and the feud? What did you think of that?
I loved working with Tommy. He was so loved by the ECW
Yeah.
crowd. It's like you could do no wrong when you're working with Dreamer. And he taught me really a lot of the hardcore style that I was not familiar with at the time. So he really he helped me out a lot. He had a lot of power both inside the ring and in the back as well. So like he was great. He was very giving. And just, he was just looking for good people to continuously work with. And I think I provided that for him. So it was like a really good matchup. We got along and did good business together.
Another person what about Terry Funk? Did you work with him a little bit? What was he like?
Oh, Terry's great. I mean, he was such a legend, just he just turns on this next level of like it's like a fine sports car. He has that next gear, and when he goes through the curtain, he just he goes from being that sweet old man to the legend Terry Funk, and he's a killer. Let me tell you, nobody hits you harder than Terry Funk.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you that much.
Oh wow! You formed a tag team with Lance Storm called the Impact Players. Whose idea was that to put you two together?
I don't remember. I think that was Paul's idea. I think that was Heyman's idea. I don't remember actually who came up with that. I think it was Heyman's idea as well. I think he came up with the whole idea. One day, just at TV, he just told Lance and I, "Oh, by the way, you guys are going to be a team," and we're like, "Okay." Yeah. We didn't question much back then, at least in my memory. I don't recall, I just remember things kind of just happening for us. It's like Paul had a plan, and his stuff seemed to work, so I don't think any of us really ever questioned it. You know what I mean? It's like, I want you to do this. We're like, okay, and it always seemed to work out. So it was a great idea. I loved working with him as a team.
You were a great team. You won the tag team titles a couple of times with Lance. What was Lance like to work with as a partner?
He was really good, and especially since I knew him so well. Like, he was the first person I met in the business. Especially that he helped train me and stuff. So we had a very natural relationship. Very much, almost like a teacher-student relationship in the tag team. Like, he was kind of like my big brother, where I kind of looked to him for advice and stuff. So but it was very effortless, when we got together. It's just, there was no ego, there was no bullshit. It was just, here's what we're doing, and we just did it.
Oh, cool. On April the 22nd, 2000, you defeated Tommy Dreamer to become the ECW Heavyweight Champion. What are your memories about that? And when did they tell you you'd be winning the title?
They told me, I'm pretty sure they told me like halfway the show. I remember it was at the ECW arena, and I didn't see my name on the card. I wasn't booked that night, which was fine for me. I was like, well, great, I get a night off, because wrestling at television, especially on ECW TV, could be stressful. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not doing anything. And then around intermission, Paul says, get dressed. And I'm like, okay. And just kind of very almost matter of fact, kind of just laid it out for me. I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay.
That was just before that Taz had dropped the title to Tommy, hadn't he? Because they did that WCW.
Right, with Mike Awesome.
WWF.
Stuff. Yeah.
With Michael. What was Mike Awesome like?
He was very quiet. Mike was a quiet dude, but very professional, but he was just, Mike was the kind of guy that didn't party very much. He was just all about, getting to the building, putting on a good match, and just going home. He was very laid back. But he was easy to work with. He was a pleasure to work with. So, And
on that night, you dropped the tag team titles to become the ECW champion. Was Lance okay with that? Or?
I don't even think I talked to Lance. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I mean, because when you're doing this, it's like I guess Paul had that whole thing in mind that once I became champion, I was going to be defending it against Lance, because at the time I think Lance was already negotiating to possibly go to WCW. So I think that had a lot to do with all of it. I mean, I'm not sure, but I know that shortly after. He did go to WCW after we wrestled on pay-per-view when I defended the title against him. I think that was in like the next month in May, if I'm not mistaken. I think that had a lot to do with it, because I think Paul already knew he was leaving.
Okay, right, that makes sense. Yeah. They eventually put you with Francine as your manager. What was she like?
She was cool. I never really I always wanted to have I had managers before. I had Chastity and Jason and Nicole Bass and stuff, but that was more of a posse. I liked the dynamic of working with a girl because, in ECW, especially because you could do the whole cat fight thing. And she was brilliant as a manager. She was a good heel, and it kind of helped me with my character,
Okay. On January 13th, 2001, you wrestled the Sandman in the last ever ECW match. What was it like? What was the atmosphere like on that night in the locker room and just in general?
I think we knew that day it was going to be it, because I remember after the match, everybody kind of came out and, to the ring, kind of said their goodbyes. It was weird. It was just a weird time. Nobody really knew what was going on. Paul was, because Paul was kind of, keeping everything to himself, because I don't think he really knew, and if he knew, he wasn't telling us, because I don't think he knew how to, it's kind of hard to break it to everyone that has stayed with the company for as long as they did and went through the hardships. So, the only reason I think everybody knew that this was the last show was there was nothing else booked and nobody was giving us any information. So, like, we kind of knew, even though it wasn't told to us, we kind of knew this was it,
And in general, what did ECW mean to you?
Oh, well, it really meant everything. I mean, it was an amazing place during an amazing time in wrestling, something that could probably never be done again. It was just, it came out of necessity, I always say, because WWE at the time was before the Attitude Era. There were shitty gimmicks. It was very like childish stuff. Like they had Duke the Dumpster Droese, they had Mantar, they had Aldo Montoya, they had all kinds of weird gimmicks. And WCW also was doing, like, Hulk Hogan would. This was before the NWO. They were also doing like really shitty ripoffs of what they did in WWE. So ECW was almost like, just like a straight ahead wrestling program. You know what I mean? It's like fans were done with the bullshit. They wanted something fresh and something new. And really, it was almost what I think helped Vince become, go into the Attitude Era, was that kind of fresh environment, like riskier content and programs, and more shoot style, with not shoot isn't in the ring, but like, talking about wrestlers, like the internet stuff, and diving more into their personalities outside of their characters, so to speak, and it just seemed to work out. It was the right place at the right time.
What was your reaction when you found out Paul Heyman had signed for the WWF?
I found we were right there neck and neck, because I didn't tell anybody I was going. I certainly didn't tell Paul. I just contacted Jim Ross, because Jim Ross was in charge back then of hiring talent. And I get a call from Paul Heyman, on my cell phone. This was before like cell phones were everywhere. We were paying per minute back then. But he calls me and he's like, why aren't you at the building yet, when I'm about to make my debut on Raw? And I'm like, how do you know about me being there? He goes, because he was debuting that night too in commentary. So he was at the building before I was. So he was already in the production meeting and knew I was going. You know what I mean? So
that's crazy. Yeah. Was it a different place than the one you just left, the WWF? I mean, you'd left there just about 4 years earlier.
Yeah. Pretty much.
How different was it?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah, it was a completely different place,
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the WCW ECW Invasion angle that they tried to do?
I mean, it was okay. I think they really missed the ball on that whole thing. I thought they could have gone much further and done it properly. It just wasn't. It ended up really being the Stone Cold Steve Austin show. Instead of really focusing on WCW and ECW, I thought they should have kept them separate. Have WCW be its own entity and have ECW, almost like if it was a shoot, have the three companies separate and almost have them all, fighting each other. But instead they just, they do what Vince always does and screws up the most natural angle in wrestling history. But
yeah, so that's all right. You were on the plane ride from hell.
Yes, I was.
What happened?
What didn't happen?
Can you tell us anything that happened on the plane? And some of the stories?
It was just. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard it a million times. It was just crazy. It was one of those perfect storms. And it's like the more I tell the story, I even find because I don't even remember that much anymore. I just remember now it's like I just go back and hear the stories over. I just remember me and Scott were together, and Scott was fucked up, and I spent most of the time trying to protect him from getting into trouble with JR, and even though he ended up getting fired for that trip. It was just crazy. There was a lot of booze on the plane and just everybody going crazy, So that's all it was, just a lot of booze and a lot of wrestlers with a lot of spare time.
So why did you leave the WWE after that? And what happened?
I think I got fired, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I got let go at the end of 2002. So yeah, that was that. I didn't want to leave. Unfortunately.
And what did you think of their One Night Stand ECW pay-per-views they did in 2005?
I thought the original one was great. It had a very legitimate feel to it. It felt like it was a real ECW show. Because it was. I mean, it was, everybody from the original ECW was there. It was run by Paul. The only you wouldn't know it was a WWE show if Vince McMahon wasn't there. It was run exactly like ECW runs their shows. And only until the second one and going into Vince's new ECW did they really start to put their hand in it, which is why it got screwed up in the first place. But when it was just Paul doing ECW, it was real because it was Paul.
Yeah. Definitely. What were your thoughts on them making ECW a third brand?
I think we were all very optimistic at first. We were all very excited. It was great to have a job again. But very quickly you just started to see, WWE putting their hands in it and messing around with it, and it quickly went to shit. As everybody knows. Yeah.
You worked with, like you said earlier, CM Punk. You gave him his debut match. What was he like to work with?
Oh, he was great. I loved working with him. We got along very well in the ring, outside the ring. I mean, he was a different guy back then than he is today. I'm sure. Very humble, but he was a pleasure. He was a pleasure to work with.
And you also worked with Kurt Angle towards the end of his first run in the WWE. What was he like?
Oh, he was great. He was great. Kurt was great. He was having some problems. Already, but as far as in the ring, it was great.
And then you left pretty much soon after that ECW brand.
Yeah.
Why did you leave?
They were just they were going nowhere with the character, and they were going nowhere with ECW as a brand. And I just figured might as well leave now while I still have some name value before they bury it, because that's where it was. I just left. I just quit. Just one day I didn't show up for work, and Johnny Ace called me, John Laurinaitis, and I explained to him why, and he's like, "Well, come to TV. We'll talk it out. We'll figure it out." And I wanted nothing to do with it at the time. It was just so shady the way they were handling ECW and working with the ECW talent. I didn't want nothing to do with it. So I just gave them my notice, and that was it.
Okay. And what did you go from there? Did you hit the indie scene and work on
pretty much,
meet and greets?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that what you've been doing ever since? Pretty much, just doing meet and greets, indies.
Yeah, I mean the indies at the time were really starting to flourish. I mean, even until the pandemic. I mean, especially where I live, there's wrestling every weekend around here, what I mean, where you could work You know, and I'm 2 hours, 3 hours from Philadelphia, from New York City, from Boston, from a lot of the main places. So, you know, I was always busy, and still, you know, hopefully when the pandemic is over, still be fairly busy, you know. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I was going to say, you look in good shape, so you're still working
Yeah.
to this day. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
I see you're also working on the brand now with Vince Russo. You do.
Absolutely.
What's Vince Russo like?
Vince is awesome. I love working for him. He's you know, we do the AEW Dynamite review show. We've been doing it almost for 2 years now, and he's great to work with. I don't know why he gets much heat from some people in the business, because just from a personal, I mean, he's a wonderful man. He's a really good person to work with and to work for. He's honest, and you know, what else could you ask for? I just think he gets a bad rap from a lot of the fans for whatever reason. I don't know. You know, just because you booked a bad year or two doesn't make you a bad person.
No, he's done so much great stuff, and then they just always focus on the little few bad things he's done in wrestling.
Absolutely, because he's a great person. I love working for him.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on AEW?
I think
the product.
I like it for the most part. I think they're great. They're a great company to be around right now. I think they're going to benefit huge from what's going on. The business is, you know, at a pretty high level. I mean, you know, even pre-pandemic, they were selling a lot of tickets to their shows. I mean, it's a shame that this happened, and you know, more fans haven't been able, you know, they kind of been doing the Daily's Place thing with, you know, their tapings, and they haven't been able to go around the country, which I hope will end soon. But, you know, I think they're great for the business. It's great to have somebody other than a McMahon running wrestling. It's just healthy. It's good for everyone. You know, the more wrestling, the better, you know? Yeah,
definitely. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you
it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and that's about it. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the future on a future show. And hope you keep well. Hope your wife gets better soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you want to tell people how they can find you?
Sure. Just follow me on Twitter at PJ Polacco, or on Instagram at PJ Polacco, and of course, ProWrestlingTees.com/Just Incredible. I have 20 shirts available right now, some old school and some new school stuff. So if you're interested, check it out.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, my friend. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the interview. There will be more interviews to come. This has been Wrestling Bantz. You know what you got to do. Smash the subscribe button. Smash the like button. We are out.